Take a look at this picture. Put yourself in their position. Imagine having to watch your loved ones suffer knowing there's nothing you can do to help them. But what if there is something to end this suffering? According to Alan Gress in the Department of Psychiatry and Physiology at the University Hospital Center in Croatia, euthanasia is purposely ending someone's life in a medical setting. Stated by Samuel J. Skidmore, a part of Counseling and Counseling Psychology at Arizona State University, discussions in the U.S. regarding euthanasia began in 1806. These discussions developed even further when Ohio tried to pass legislation in 1906. As the years go by, laws continue to be added and discussed. As we can see on this timeline, in 1989, Oregon was the first to introduce an assisted dying bill. Two other examples include in 1992, when California introduced the Death with Dignity Act proposition, and in 2009, when Washington passed legislation. According to the Completed Life Initiative, since January 2024, there are 10 states in the U.S. which allow a terminally ill person to request euthanasia. On this map, in the dark green, we can see the 10 following states which allow this. These states include California, Colorado, New Mexico, Maine, Washington, New Jersey, Vermont, Montana, and Hawaii.
Good morning, I'm Alejandro Barrios.
I'm Adriana Ballard.
I'm Will Ford.
I'm Sophia Nieves.
And I'm Valeria Luciano, and this brings us to our question. In what ways does the federal legalization of assisted suicide in the United States positively impact the families of terminally ill patients? To answer our question, euthanasia positively impacts the families because it brings them relief and allows them to save money. On the other hand, people disagree with this due to their religion.
One way that families of terminally ill patients could save money through euthanasia would be through medical savings. According to Ezekiel Emanuel, terminally ill patients are more likely to be uninsured, meaning that the poorest dying patients are likely to be relying on Medicaid or Medicare. This would imply that these patients would have to spend more money out of pocket, which is something these families just can't do. As we can see here in this table, the average end-of-life healthcare cost for Medicare patients in the last month of life range from anywhere to $5,000 to $10,000. Although these are 1995 statistics, the concept of reducing medical spendings by dying earlier still remains. In fact, in current day statistics, families of the typical uninsured terminal patient could save up to $22,000 if the patient were to die just 1 month earlier on their own terms. These kinds of savings could be crucial for families of the uninsured. Families of terminally ill patients would also save money through the anticipation of funeral spendings. As you all may know, planning of a funeral for a family member who has passed away is an expensive endeavor during a very difficult time. In this map here, we can see the current day cost of funerals is pretty expensive, with the average U.S. cost coming to $7,200. According to Victoria Hayman, less than 4 out of every 10 Americans are able to pay a $1,000 expense out of savings. With this being the case, one could say that choosing to die earlier in order to clear the minds of family members, allowing for better funeral planning and saving of money, is something a lot of terminal patients would want to do. According to Ezekiel Emanuel, families of patients choosing to go through euthanasia are less likely to be burdened by the death of a family member. This implies that dying earlier would help clear minds of family members, therefore allowing for better funeral planning. Considering that terminal patients are more likely to be poor, meaning that these savings, whether they be medical or funeral, could be very crucial for these families.
The option of euthanasia can provide families mental relief. According to Joseph Paku, he states that terminal illnesses can lead to a loss of independence and can also lead to a loss of activities. As shown in this graph, it shows the number of euthanasia requests in the Netherlands, showing that the majority of requests were rejected. Terminal illnesses lower the quality of life and can put significant pressure and stress on families. According to Neil Gorsuch, he states that there's no good of a life spent in a coma, and that existing itself isn't valuable, but rather existing and having the chance to spend time with family is valuable. And this helps the patient make the most of their lives. This graph shows the amount of euthanasia requests that were rejected, and it shows that in the ones that were accepted, a lot of them were with the required consent of a family member. According to Amy Ann, she states that euthanasia is not considered suicide in terminal illnesses. This is because it leads to a relief in suffering. And she also states that euthanasia can allows patients to go back home to their families, and this shows how it can give a mental relief in families, and it allows them to spend the rest of their life together with their family. This graph shows the euthanasia people with disorders requesting euthanasia, showing how most requests are rejected, but this number is subject to change in the future as euthanasia requests would be more accepted in the future.
To add on, evidence shows that in various euthanasia cases, patients often experience a sense of comfort, relief, and peace. This allows the patient to express their wishes, say emotional goodbyes, and find peace with their decision of euthanasia. This further demonstrates how euthanasia provides significant mental and physical relief for the patient. Moreover, it creates an opportunity for families and loved ones to express their goodbyes and find closure, as well as having a meaningful conversation with the patient. As we see in this chart, it shows comparison of years with health professionals and treatments for the requesters and receivers in the Netherlands, showing how people who request euthanasia had more contact with health professionals.
Religion plays a big role in opinions on euthanasia, influencing both personal and society's beliefs. Many traditions such as Christianity, Islam, and Judaism believe that life is sacred and that the taking of a life, even through euthanasia, is morally wrong. According to the Bible, in one of the 10 Commandments, it states, "Thou shalt not murder." This is often used to argue that PAS is equivalent to taking a life. This first graph shows how Americans' moral views on PAS vary throughout the years, which is largely influenced by religious beliefs. These beliefs ultimately impact the choices to terminally ill patients and their families. Religious beliefs also impact how families approach assisted suicide. So for some, religion can provide comfort and clarity when going through a hard time. But when family members have differing beliefs, it can create tension and conflict, especially when some see PAS as morally unacceptable while others prioritize reducing suffering. This following graph illustrates how religious and non-religious individuals differ their opinions on euthanasia. This data highlights that non-religious individuals believe that euthanasia is morally unacceptable, while religious individuals do not. These contrasting perspectives influence personal beliefs.
Overall, we believe the federal legalization of euthanasia in America has positive impact on both the families and the patient. The ability to end life to make it easier and smoother process should be available to all families across America. We say this knowing the limitations such as religious beliefs. Many families across America are strong supporters of religion and may not support the idea of suicide. We rationalize this because we believe suicide does not equate with assisted suicide. According to Phoebe Friesen, she states, "The person that is in the process of dying and seeking the option to hasten an already inevitable and imminent death, the request to hasten a death is not equated with suicide." Thank you.
All right, questions. We'll start down here. Alejandro, how'd your group decide how to include Valeria's paper into your overall presentation?
So Valeria's paper was mostly focused on the historical context of euthanasia in the United States. So we mostly decided to use her paper, as a whole in the beginning of our presentation, as you could have seen with the chart that shows the history of it, the timeline, in order to provide more context for what we're talking about.
All right. Next up, reflecting on your colleagues' work, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of this issue?
I believe Will's work had the greatest impact of my overall understanding because his paper talks about the relief and peace that euthanasia brings to families, which is our overall topic, discussing how euthanasia provides significant mental and physical relief for the patients and the families.
So, what's an example of a compelling argument from your peers' reports you decided not to use, and why didn't you use it?
We didn't use Adriana's on argument about the morality of it because in my paper, I used the claim about religion, and ours kind of went hand in hand, and we used hers to better understand mine and add more to my argument. So we really kind of cut out that part of her paper and didn't use it.
Okay. way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about the research you conduct?
A lot of the research I conducted, a lot of it included the negative mental effects that this can have on families, including like trauma and long-term PTSD effects on families. And our conclusion was that euthanasia provides positive effects on families of terminally ill patients, and yeah.
All right, and save the best for last. If this was even a larger group and you had one more team member, what's a perspective that they could bring that would help contribute to this project?
If we had another team member, I think they could bring in a futuristic point of view and include more of the long-term effects, like Will stated in his paper. He researched the long-term effects of like PTSD, but if we included that in our presentation, maybe our resolution and our outcome would have been